1 second. Okay, so hello everyone. It's me again, your favorite Zoomcast podcast guy, Dave Chlystek. Tonight I am joined, and I'm very excited. I have some very special guests, and tonight's topic is going to be women in adult animation, comedy, I guess, and action. So we are joined by Ashley Long, who is the supervising director, correct, Ashley? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
All right. On Paradise PD, the #1 show on Netflix. So
yeah, it was for a while.
It
was, and then it was 3, and then it was 1, and then it was 6, and then it was 3.
well, you know,
it does well.
You were there right when all of this kind of hit with the coronavirus. So you probably had like 80 million people watching it. So
yeah, maybe that's true.
So that's pretty impressive. That's pretty good. So, and Ashley also, I had the honor of serving with her on the executive board at the Animation Guild. I can tell everybody from I have a lot of respect for you. So, you know, I always enjoyed working with you on different things, on the negotiation committee, you know, all the things. You're a very good person, and you always look out for people. So next up is well, why don't you introduce her, because I don't really know her. So Ashley,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Beth Wollman is an artist who's been working with me for, I believe, 5-ish years.
Coming up
boarding.
Hi, Beth.
And on this last season of Paradise, also co-directed an episode.
Wow, very cool. Congratulations. Awesome. Very, very nice. So next up, we have Joie Foster. Joie is a revision artist. Or no, you're a storyboard artist now, right? On American Dad. You got promoted. Congratulations. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
And so you want to tell anybody? You want to say hi to everybody? Hello.
Hi. Hello.
All right. So, and our final contestant is Meghan Przenek. Meghan, am I saying your last name right? Close. Are you here?
No. Yeah. Przenek.
Przenek.
There you go.
So, and Meghan works with me on QForce over at Titmouse for Netflix, and also she is a longtime animator on South Park. So I'm honored to have all of you here. So I had reached out to Ashley about talking, you know, comedy stuff. You know, she's been gracious enough to speak at one of my seminars that I do back in the good old days when we could do them live. That was actually, that was the very last thing that I was able to do. We just got that one in right before everything hit. You know, we wanted to talk about comedy, but Ashley had actually suggested, and I think it's a really good topic, women working in adult animation. And one of the things, and I brought this up to Meghan today, you know, we chat on the Zoom thing for work, and Meghan was one of my students. Joie was one of my students as well. I noticed in my classes in 3 years of teaching that my classes are, I would say, out of 30 students, that's the maximum I have in my class, I would say at least 65% are women and the other 35% are men. So there's definitely, and that's consistent all the way through 3 years of teaching this. So clearly there is a strong desire out there for, you know, for women to get into this business. And Ashley, you were, you know, like you said, it's good to, you know, we should let everybody know, like, there's lots of avenues for women in this business, you know, and you shouldn't just think it's just a guys club for stuff. So
yeah, and like you mentioning the percentage thing reminds me that graduating art classes currently are overwhelmingly female, but then you don't see that same percentage hold when you get into the job force and you get higher and higher in the job force. There's a huge drop off, and I think a lot of that is because women aren't encouraged in the same ways that male artists are, and not in comedy and not in adult comedy specifically. It's historically been viewed as a guy's field, and I think it's important to encourage people to pursue it harder, but also support each other. So
of my career, and in action, it's mostly guys. It's mostly a bro, culture. Although there are more and more women who are starting to kick that door down, which is encouraging and good to see. And I do think, in comedy, I think the shows that I've worked on have been predominantly male, in ratio. I mean, you see a lot of women in production, but you don't see them in creative, and it's a shame, because I'm sure, I can tell you from my classes, there are a lot of talented women out there, knocking at the door, ready to start work. So,
well, people don't seem to think that women can be funny, or they think that women are going to be too sensitive to the material. I think that's why we don't see a lot of them invited into the adult space in the first place. And they're very, very wrong, because I think some of the best and most adult stuff that we've had on Paradise has been from the female board artists and the female directors.
I definitely, I mean, if anybody has seen Paradise, it's pretty adult. So you can't, if you're easily offended, yeah, for sure. That's not going to be a show. That women, I think, it's like, I don't think there's I don't think most people have problems with these, and boarding and the sensibilities. So it just shows you right there. I think it's one of the funniest shows out there. So you have the biggest input on that show. So, and it's certainly not a show for kids. So, and but it's funny, but it's really funny stuff. And it's like, and I do think that, I think sometimes there's a prejudice towards, only guys can do that kind of humor, potty humor, or do something that it's a little more, risque or joke wise. So,
we do a good job of grossing out the men on our crew on a pretty regular basis, and I'm very pleased with that.
So the show is hysterical. Like, if anybody hasn't seen, who hasn't seen the show, you should definitely check it out. It's awesome. It's really funny. And Ashley, I'm sure you have a ton of input on it, because you're the last person who's going to be making the notes and changing stuff and putting stuff in there. So you have to really be, you have to really be on. You have to really be funny, I'm sure, with a lot of the stuff that you do, right?
Well, a lot of it is knowing the sensibility of the showrunners who I've worked with for many years. So a lot of it is just about tweaking it to be what they're going to want, and finding that balance of, like, yes, they want gross, but is that the showpiece here, or is that kind of like, incidental? Where's the focus supposed to be? A lot of what I see, maybe people testing for our show say, the big mistake I see is they're just really trying to be as gross as possible all the time, and they're throwing too much in the pot, and it's distracting and it's weird, and they're not really getting the humor. They just want to be gross, and that's not always the focal point.
Right.
So striking the balance of the right type of gross, and when do we get away from the gross, is really important. And so that's a lot of what I will ask to amp up, or I will ask to rein in, to try to get it in that sweet spot for the guys.
Well, one of the things that I think, and I don't know if this is a gender specific thing, but I always think that one of the things that separates, really good board artists from not so good is the fact that you're able to have empathy. You are able to put empathy into the board. You're able to capture emotion, and a lot of times people just, like, in action, it's the same way. Like, they just want to have action, 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 and it's like, no, you have to slow it down, so the action, when you do the action, it really stands out. And comedy is the same way. Like, you can't just have joke, 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 joke. You have to let it breathe so the joke reads, people could register it, you laugh at it, catch your breath, then you're ready for the next joke, you know, and the next, and I think that the really strong board artists across the board have a knack of being very good with empathy and emotion and acting and putting it into the boards. Would you agree with that? Because I see it in Paradise. I mean, I think you guys, you know, as the show progressed, there was, I mean, it was character arcs and development that was in there, but also, you know, you can almost see when people start to really get the characters, and because there's like a little subtle shift that happens, that the acting gets a little richer with them. They get a little more full, you know, and I think you guys have done an excellent job with that with Paradise. Like, it's not just a one-dimensional show, you know, with just a bunch of gross out humor. You actually do have characters that have heart and emotion to them, and I think that's a key.
Oh, sure, that's a given. Yeah, you want to have some endearing qualities even in a show like this, and allow artists who are especially great with a certain character have the things with that character. Beth is really, really good with Dusty. Endearing and funny, also just being able to manipulate his anatomy is like a whole other thing. So, you know, maybe she can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we'll have to. All right, Beth, that's your cue.
That's my cue. Yeah.
Throwing the ball to you.
Well, in terms of moving, I mean, Dusty, his legs are not designed to bend down and pick stuff off the ground, so that's always an interesting challenge whenever you have to address that when it's written in the script. But it's kind of speaking to kind of the idiosyncrasies of each character. It's how does this character approach something like that? Like, Dusty is gonna struggle like that, so you know, it kind of works for his favor if he's got to like get down and really like hoist himself up, and you can kind of cheat stuff there. Whereas another character like Gina or Fitz, like, they're gonna kind of pop down and pop up. So it's having these little moments while characters are doing stuff sometimes that it doesn't take away from what's happening, but it adds interest and it adds personality, and it kind of lets you know that character a little bit better in terms, if that makes sense.
It does.
And I think that's good. I mean, it can be something as simple as like, how is a character standing when they're kind of in their T-pose? Like, if they're listening to another character, they don't just have to be standing. So it's, are they leaning up against the table? Are they are their arms crossed? That can kind of be different ways to add personality, even when and just kind of add richness to the shot, even when they're not the focus of it.
I think that's great advice.
Makes it fun.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, characters, you know, we don't just stand around all the time. You know, when we're talking, people do things, you know, and I think that adds to your character. And I think that I think a lot of times people miss that whether it's because of time and they don't want to draw more poses or whatever, but you know, even a couple poses go a long way if you're to give character to somebody, just something little, you know. But if you can come up with something that's, I teach a class and I always show this video. It's about Akira Kurosawa, and it's called composition, movement through composition. And they talk about how Kurosawa always told his actors to get one defining thing, and you know, so he had Tafune, you know, in Seven Samurai, he was had like must have had a crick in his shoulder or something. But when you saw him walking in a distance in silhouette, and he did this, it was you knew it was him. It was a defining thing. And I always think that that's such a strong piece of advice that board artists need to, you know, really should follow those kinds of things. Like, in developing character and developing, you know, you want to give them something that makes them stand out a little bit, you know. I mean, not that the guy's going to be standing in the crowd doing this the whole time, but something that you're going to give them that gives them some you know, there's some recognition when you see them, and you're like, oh, that's, you know, that's whoever. So I think that's a really good thing, and it's probably why you're such a good board artist, because you think about that kind of stuff. So that's very cool. That's you know, not a lot of people do. Some people are just, they put those characters and they just stand there, you know, then they're dead, you know, for like whatever, how long another character's talking. So it's great that you don't. And it does show on Paradise, like you can see, you know, the characters aren't just doing that. It's not distracting. You don't do it because there's an art to that too. Like, you have to make sure it's not distracting from what's the most important part of it, but also it gives them a little bit of life. So it's a very, very, very good point. All right, I'm gonna jump over to Joie real quick. Joie, you're over on American Dad, so you're hearing all of this. So I know you know what, that there's lots of things to think about over on American Dad. And so you want to talk to that?
Well, so our characters can be a little stiff at times, so you have to find creative ways to mess with the character model to give it a little bit more motion and life and reflect the empathy kind of stuff that you were mentioning earlier, to emphasize and highlight the joke. So you kind of have to like find ways to add that in there, something that will make your director happy, like that kind of stuff. So it actually, I think, makes it a really fun challenge. Kind of, when you're given a challenge where you're put inside of a box and given some rules, and you end up getting some really great stuff out of it because you're given parameters you have to follow.
You always get better stuff. I always think the more rules you have, the better the results, because if you're just told to do whatever, it's almost looking at a blank piece of paper. It's intimidating because it's like you could do everything. When you're told you can't do this and you can't do that, you have to really focus on those things. And I know that for, American Dad certainly has their rules and they have their things that they do. So, but it's true. It's a kind of a restrictive kind of a show. It's writer driven. Mm-hmm. So you definitely, the jokes are, while there's some visual, obviously the jokes play visually, but, a lot of it also has to be in service to the dialogue, correct?
Yeah. We don't get to add too much extra stuff. Like, we don't get to invent jokes like a board-driven show would, obviously.
Yeah, right.
But what I do like is one of our big style things is the visual reveal. It's one of the most frequent jokes you'll see on there, where the characters will be talking about something and then we'll, truck out to reveal something, and it's like, that's the punchline. And it ends up giving you lots of very interesting staging challenges because you've got to be able to compose the scene so that the joke lands properly. Mm-hmm. And then, also sometimes hiding some stuff kind of in background sketches and that kind of thing. So it's just fun to figure out where to add little bits of flavor where you can.
We were just talking about that last week, about staging and how important blocking is, and how it's something that people don't really talk about that much in school or in classes. And it is the most important thing when you're doing a board. It's blocking and knowing how a joke, especially in comedy, like, something has to land, and you may start here and you have to end here for that joke to play off, but you have to make sure that there's enough room for everything to read and everything to see everything. So it's a real thing to be able to do that. It's a real skill.
We spend a long time in our blocking and staging stuff to try to make sure that every composition we have works and gives enough breathing room for jokes and reveals and that kind of stuff in the staging. Yeah. And you end up kind of, I'm sure other shows are just like this, but you kind of work forward to back and then backward, where you get further into the scene and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to think about this particular thing and then do it backward to make sure everything matches and works with itself. And it's definitely a fun logic puzzle, I think, especially. I always
think of it as Mr. Spock's board in his chessboard in Star Trek.
Yeah, there you go.
5D chess or whatever he had. It's what a board artist almost has to do. Like, you have to think on, so many different levels and how things play off, and jokes that might pay off 3 scenes down or 4 scenes down, and you have to really think about how those things play and what they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no doubt about that. All right, so on to our final contestant, Meghan. So, Meghan, how are you?
Doing great. How are you? How's everyone doing out there?
I think everybody's doing okay.
All right.
Everybody seems to be doing all right.
Yeah, thank you.
So I work with Meghan on QForce, and Meghan is awesome. So
thanks. You are too.
Thank you. You are, I really enjoy working with you. So we just started the show, so we're kind of getting all know each other, but we've done pretty good, I think, with the crew. I feel like I know you guys about as well doing the Zoom stuff as I would know you being in the office, which is pretty good. the one thing that I find interesting, you've had a very long career for being so young. You worked for 9 years on South Park as an animator, right? Am I right? 9?
Yep,
Is that right?
that's right.
Yeah. All right. I knew it, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty amazing. Like that's a pretty incredible thing. And then now you've transitioned into storyboarding, and you worked on BoJack Horseman, right, as a storyboard artist.
Yep.
Is that the first show you started boarding on?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a
Very cool.
pretty big honor for that to be my first show to board on, to get to board on the final season of it. It was
That's pretty
really
cool.
good time.
Well, you're really good. And then now you're on QForce, and QForce is a show we're doing at Netflix, which is a much different show than BoJack.
Oh man, all 3 shows I've worked on are so different in terms of style. Like with South Park, it's very like, it's this very like, limited's not the right word in terms of animation, but like it's like you have certain tools to work with, and you learn a lot as an animator, because you have these characters that you can't like they can't like touch the tops of their heads. There's so many things that they like can't do because they're so small, and their heads are so big, and like little things like just their eyebrow direction like sells an emotion like for the whole scene. So, and then there's like fun little gestures you can do with the characters. Like, just like, there's like Butters has this little thing he does with his fists, and like Jimmy and the way he walks and the way he blinks. So there's like that language of like telling a story. Then you go from that to BoJack, which is more like a sitcom. If you've watched that show, it's a lot of where we just have like one background when we're boarding to work with, and a lot of it's just punching in around that background because it's got to have that like sitcom feel. And now I'm on QForce, where it's a much more, Dave, as you know, like cinematic show, where we're encouraged to think a lot more like cinematically, where we're really thinking about our compositions, and we're we're doing up angles and down angles and all these things that and the other 2 shows didn't often get to do. So it's been really cool to get to have that range.
It says a lot about you, Meghan, that you're able to do all of those, because that's not something that a lot of people will be able to do. Like, I know guys who everybody knows Joaquin Dos Santos. A lot of people, anyway. He's in action. He's a fairly big name. He's actually going to direct the Spider-Man, the next Spider-Verse movie. He's a friend of mine. We worked together at Sony. We worked on he worked when he was working on Justice League. I was working on Static over at Warner's, and brilliant action guy. But he was a guy who was like, I don't do comedy. It's like it's some artists that, as amazing as they are, can't always make that jump, or don't feel that they can make that jump. So I think it says a lot about you that you're able to pull that off, because it's brave. It's a brave thing to be able to go from those different things. It's very cool. That is a cool thing. So, all right. So I told Ashley I would just kind of float in here now and moderate the stuff. But Ashley, I think that you wanted to speak a little bit to kind of, maybe get the discussion going a little bit about women in adult comedy. So, let's get the ball rolling a little bit here. How do you feel like with your job, with what you have, like, do you see more women coming into the business, that had been there before doing board work and doing, breaking in and working in different various capacities? Or do you think it's still somewhat of a problem yet in the business?
If we're talking industry as a whole, I would say it's still got some ways to go. It really varies from studio to studio, and maybe even show to show. There are a lot of women on my show. I think many people would be shocked to know that Paradise is like a 45% woman crew. You wouldn't expect that. And it's not that I've gone out seeking women specifically, but I did go out and look for people who were underappreciated at their current jobs, underestimated at their current jobs, and often those are the women. And being able to give those people an opportunity to grow, or an opportunity to show what they've always been able to do but were never allowed to do, is rewarding for me. It's rewarding for the show. It's rewarding for them. So I think women being involved in the adult space is growing if the people heading up the production allow it to do so.
Yeah. Did you ever get pushback on anything that people were like, whoa, you're hiring too many women, or?
No, no, and I think a lot of that probably goes to the trust that I have with my showrunners. We just have a really good relationship, and they're pretty much like, whoever you want, we're not going to argue with that because you know what you need. And would it be different with somebody else? Maybe, but I've not had any pushback about that. And the proof is in the work.
Sure.
The boards are great. The color is great. The design is great. And I really don't have anybody asking. If people ask who did what, it's because they're like, oh my God, that's awesome. Who did that? I want to go tell them how great it is. It's not a scrutiny of the work, and it's not trying to suss out like what gender's responsible for this. So I think we have a really good environment for women to advance, but I know that that's not everywhere yet.
Yeah, I think that, unfortunately I think you're absolutely right. I think that, I also think that a lot of times when men are hiring, men, it's like, I think there's a part of that. I think that factors in. I don't even know if it's so much a thing of, a gender bias as it's just, you hire people that you're friends with and you pull them in. And I think, although I do think I can speak to somewhat to the fact that I know I've heard people over the course of my career who don't feel like, oh, she's a woman, she can't do action or she can't do that. And it was the biggest bunch of bullshit, that I'd ever heard. Because some of these people were better than, they were better than all the guys on the crew, myself included. It was like, there was some amazing, talent out there. And who cares if it's a male or a female, who cares? Like, you want the best results. And I do think that, a lot of times, I imagine it's got to be tough at times though, too. And now with your own career, Ashley, was it difficult for you, like, to break in, or were you able to get in pretty?
Well, the time that I entered was not a very busy time in animation. I moved out here in 2005, and there just wasn't a lot going on, and we were still in that zone of people thinking 2D was going to die out completely. So it's difficult to answer because it took me about 4 months to land a job, but I think a lot of that just had more to do with what was happening or not happening, and not really anything to do with skill set or gender bias or anything like that. There wasn't a lot.
Did you ever feel like it hampered you though in your career being a woman? Did you feel like it was because I mean you're very successful. It's a very, you have a great you're still very young, and you still, you've achieved a lot. So that's a really speaks very well to your talent. But did you ever feel like being a woman held you back by doing any, like, with people had any, preconceived notions of what you could or couldn't do?
I didn't feel hampered by that, but that's probably because I've always been really pushy, and I don't really care what other people think.
I mean, you could say pushy, but strong. I think being determined and strong-willed is a much better thing. And also,
that's a much better term. Yes, that's much better. I've always been strong-willed, and so I think maybe if there were tastes of that early in my career, I just wasn't perceiving it because I was like, oh no, I know I'm doing a good job. Who cares what that person thinks?
Yeah.
And I think when I did get to director level, there were times where I felt maybe a little bit of resentment from some men on crews because they just couldn't believe the work was that good. There was sort of this like, hey, I went to your animatic. Wow, your first show directing. Hi, it looked great. How are you doing that? Like I was calling in magic elves to do the work for me or something. It was like, oh, it can't be possible that it's you though. And so that was odd, but again, I was like, that sounds like a you problem, bro. So I think that doesn't come easily to to everybody, and that doesn't come easily to a lot of women, because girls are raised to feel bad about themselves and feel bad about praise, but you can untrain, you know, you can work that out of yourself. And I think if you proceed with the mindset that, like, no, you are strong at this and you're good and you know your skill set, like, don't be bothered with that shit.
Well, I think we're in an industry that the strong, you know, you have to have a thick skin in our industry, and to survive, to thrive in our industry, and not, but to survive, you have to be able to take criticism. You can't, you know, and let's face it, all artists suffer self-doubt and have moments of, you know, where you're like, okay, I mean, no matter how good you are, you're going to have those moments. And I think that, you know, I think that women, that's like, it's like you said, like, girls are always, I have a daughter, and the last thing I ever want her to feel is that she can do anything she wants to do. I don't ever want her to feel like somebody can tell her, this is how you have to be and where you have to be. And I think that I feel that way for my son as well. But I think girls sometimes do have, you know, a little bit more of that, you know, there's a little bit of a bias that's there. And I know it exists in action. I know there are women board artists that are just amazing, and they do breathtaking work. And the guys will be like, wow, like, it's the same thing you just said. Like, they'll be like, wow, like, like, who did that? And they'll be like, oh, you know, she did. And they'll, really? Like, who helped her? Nobody. She's just that good, you know? It's like, but you do get that sometimes. You do, even now. So, you know, it's something, I think it's a thing that, yeah, on top of everything else, you have to kind of push past. But the good thing is like, you're kicking down doors, and you're a pioneer. I mean, you're, you know, my friend Jennifer Coyle directs, supervising director on Harley Quinn, and she was one of the people that came up with me in the beginning of all of our careers, and she's really made quite a career for herself as well. And I think and she's developed a very tough, thick skin over the years, because there's been a lot of that kind of stuff, you know, a lot of abuse in a lot of ways and different things. So, you know, it's unfortunate that you have to put up with all the other shit outside of just doing your job, and, you know, and that. So I think
it's kind of like, when I'm hiring people, you look for people who are skilled, but I also look for that extra layer of, hopefully don't be a douchebag. Like, there's no room for that. There's no room for that on my crew. And, like, how difficult is that, not to be a douchebag?
It should be fun. I mean, the job is tough enough anyway. Like, if you can have, I always think, like, yes, you have to be professional. The work has to be in. It has to be good. It has to meet a certain standard. But if you're doing all of that, it should be fun. Like, it shouldn't be all stressful. It should be enjoyable. You know, it's like, that's what we envisioned when we all went to art school. We wanted to draw for a living, and what better thing? But when you're going and you're getting bullied or beat up all the time, that's no fun. You know, who the hell wants a job like that? So, and I have heard nothing but praise for you as a show, you know, person running a show. So, you know, that's really nice to hear. So I'm glad when I hear my friends are really good people to work with. So that's all.
Yeah, not douchebags.
Not douchebags. Yeah, not that. Don't be a dick. Yeah. What a revelation, huh? Like, be nice to people. Yeah, and you get better work. I think, you know, anytime that I've directed, if you're genuinely complimentary to people, you just get better work, because people's spirits lift, and people want to work for you, and they want to do the work. They're excited. That's what everybody wants. You want to do good work. Nobody's there to do a bad job. So if you're, you know, I think that's I'm sure that your crew loves coming into work, and there's no better compliment than that, than going, well, right now it's zooming into work. But, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's how I gauge what kind of job I'm doing. I want people to want to be there. I want people to come back season after season.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be the reward, you know. And I guess the advice I would give to anybody who's in some kind of leadership position, storyboard supervisor, director, supervising director, just be the boss that you always wanted to have.
Yeah.
And that does take extra work, and you already have busy days. I know this so well. Yes, it takes extra work to check in and see if people are okay as people, and do they need help, and how can you help them, whether that's like getting better at the skill set you need from them, or just getting in a better headspace for themselves. It's extra effort, but it pays off. It pays off, and it's important to do. It's important to do just as a good person.
It is. I agree with you. Beth, would you agree with that? It's actually awesome to work for. Don't worry, I'm not putting you on the spot.
Well, I have been working with her since like I started out in animation, and like it's almost 5 years now. So that's pretty much like, you don't follow someone around unless they're good to work for. And see, my first job in animation, I was the only female storyboard artist on the crew, and then Ashley was the only female director on the crew. So I'm assuming that's why we got paired up, but it was really great to have someone who took me, who was pretty fresh and green from school, and like took the time to say, hey, here's what you did, this is good, let's do this next time, and let's try this, and just kind of constantly giving you something to kind of learn and work on in a way that's like, oh, this is really helpful, and then I can be a better board artist, and you learn what to look for. And that's kind of like, I don't know, that was probably the best possible outcome that I could have had in my first gig, because I had no idea what I was doing. I had just graduated from school, like, kind of you sit down to your computer and you're like, oh gosh, now we're actually doing the thing. So
communication is everything, right? I mean, communication, it's so important. And, I've always said in my career, I was lucky because the very first job that I had, although I was a little bit older, I had worked in comic books prior to coming out. I worked for Marvel but my very first job in animation storyboarding, I met people who were fantastic mentors. And I think that that's always, communication is key. And I owe them so much, because if I hadn't had them in my career, I don't know how good I would have ever gotten. I learned things that you weren't going to learn in school from those people. And that's invaluable. That's such an invaluable thing. And also patience, people who are willing to be patient with you, and they know that you're not going to come out of the gate hitting grand slams every time, but they're good enough to tell you when you do hit the home run or the double or the single, and when you strike out, they tell you how to fix that kind of, and how to be better. And that's invaluable stuff for sure. There's no doubt about that. So where did you go to school?
I went to Columbus College of Art and Design.
In Ohio?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
small school, but there's a few people out here from there, which is kind of cool. Most people don't know where that is. But.
Well, one of my usually a gentleman who's on here with me, Dave Schwartz. He's a longtime storyboard person, director, and he retired. He's out in Cleveland now. He teaches at the Cleveland Institute of Art.
Oh, okay.
So it's unfortunately he's not here tonight. Usually he's here, but he'd be like, oh yeah, I probably knows the place very well. So I'm from Pittsburgh. Meghan is from Pittsburgh. So, we know Columbus, right, Meghan? You know Columbus.
Columbus is pretty cool.
Columbus is nice. Yes, Columbus is very nice area. So is that where you grew up? Did you grow up in Ohio?
No, I just went to school there.
Oh, okay.
New York, North Carolina girl.
Oh, okay. But. So, yeah, I mean, you've had it's not easy. Like Meghan and I talked about this, being from Pittsburgh, I had so many people tell me, like, what are you doing? Like, you'll never make a career doing comic book work, and it's like, you just go, this is what I want to do. And you put the blinders on and you just go and do it. I don't know if it was any different for you. Things have changed somewhat, over the years from when I was, went back to, we didn't have cars back then. Everything was horse and buggy. I mean, that was the biggest change with the cars, but there is a difference. I think it's a little bit today with everything being done remotely. Maybe you didn't get that kind of pressure, but it's still, takes a lot to come out, to LA to look for work and to do this. So it's, kudos to you. It's a hard, not an easy thing to do, to pull up roots and leave family and everything and do that. So
I think it's good. I think I only went to school in Ohio, so I never intended to stay there.
Right.
Which was easy, but I did go to school with a lot of people who were from Ohio, and I think it was really important. I think like even at the time, it wasn't that long ago, so you have to be in LA in order to get the job.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to hire people when
it is.
When you can recommend people who are just there. People don't really want to hire you if you're from Ohio. So, I mean, when I applied to Bento Box, I did not tell them I was living in Ohio, and they scheduled me for an interview. And I was like, cool. And I bought a plane ticket, and I came out here for an interview.
Yeah.
I was out here for less than 24 hours before I went back.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like you have to be ready for that kind of thing and just kind of do it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least you don't second guess it later and you wonder what would have happened if you had done that.
Right. I mean, networking is everything. Networking is so important. So important. So, all right, I'm gonna jump over to Joie real quick. Joie, you've done a lot of different things too in your career. You were a comic book artist. You're a woman of many talents.
I definitely took the circuitous way to get into animation. It was what I wanted to do, but had a very hard time breaking in, and so kind of took this path that went a bit like this before I finally got here. I did theme park design, I did game design, I did comic books as like full-time for quite a while. I did a little bit of animation stuff freelance, but finally got to a point where the freelance world had beat me up enough that I was, okay, I really want to work in a studio. Let's focus on that again before I was able to get in.
Well, I mean, you certainly paid your dues for sure. I mean, when you took my class, you were ready. You can always tell when somebody takes a class and you're like, okay, they're ready for this. They just need that opportunity. So.
Yeah, I went to art school twice. Yeah. And then it was, I graduated grad school in 2013, and it still took me until 2017 to really get into the industry that I'm in, and I'm here to stay.
Good. Yes, you're very talented. So there's, but that gives you. But I would think that gives you, a lot of. It's sometimes when the road is harder, it's certainly, I think it toughens you up in a lot of ways, and I think that that you get a thicker skin, again. But not only that, but also if you have that determination, when you have to go through that gauntlet, things don't seem as tough when you actually get there, when you get to the top of the mountain, because you've gone through the gauntlet to get there. So the things that other people may, who had an easier time getting through, may stress over, you're probably, like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. I can kind of
like, I've been on fire. This is fine.
So, well, all right. So, and Candace, are you here? Candace is here. So she's also here. Yes. Candace is there. Hi, Candace. Candace is awesome too. Candace is one of our, Candace is you're a CG. Why don't you tell everybody what you do?
Oh, goodness.
This is Candace Stevenson.
Hi. I'm a CG. I work in look dev, and I'm about to start on a lead position on a new show at Nickelodeon. I don't know if it's been announced, so I can't say. But
is it adult? No, I'm kidding.
It's not adult. That's why I was like, oh, I don't work in adult, but sure.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I did the I guess the easier route than what Joie did. I went to school at Ringling. I've been working in the industry, oh my goodness, almost 15 years now. So yeah, and I've been a lead off and on in look development, also called surfacing, for a couple years.
So Candace, you started when you were like 10 in the business then? So,
yeah, yes, okay. Exactly. Okay. That is the correct answer.
So for anybody who doesn't know, I'm going to tell you, like, again, I had the honor of serving with you on the executive board along with Ashley, and awesome person. So always very much wanting to help people, and, and always going out of your way to, it was an honor serving with you on that board. You're some of my favorite people in the world. So, you're really, really good people. So, and Joey and Candace are good friends. So I figured I would, and they took my class together. They came in and took my class at the Guild. So
we haunted the back of the room.
you did, but you were fantastic. So, it was always, you made the class a lot of fun. Like when you weren't in there, whatever weeks you guys weren't there, it was like, oh man, they're not here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was always
great class.
Great.
One of the great things for, like, with me being on the CG side, it's really important, I think, to learn the other parts of the pipeline, like learning what the storyboard artists are doing and what the animators are doing. It really informs our work and it gives us perspective. Like, I strongly recommend, regardless of what part of the pipeline you work in, if you can learn from other people, there might be techniques. Like Joie showed me some of the tools that they use to do their boarding, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this would make my texturing work so much easier. So you learn all sorts of things from different people.
It's true. It's absolutely true.
I recently got to sit in an editing meeting at work, and it was really great to get to understand how the editors work in our pipeline, as well as the croppers. And I got to do some background design over my hiatus for the show. So it's just like slowly collecting all the pieces of the pipelines. And so I can understand, what can I do as a storyboard artist to make everyone else's job easier? Because there are absolutely things I can do to make other people's jobs easier.
Yep. And that's the thing you learn, like the more things you put your hands in, you start to realize, remember what I always said in class, like I always thought people should direct, board artists should get to direct, not because like we're, it's some reward. Actually, it's the opposite. It's like, because you get to see just how everything goes. And when you're doing that, you really learn and appreciate the value of being on time and having board artists that don't flake and things like that. So I always think that's a very important thing. Good for you, Joey. I'm very proud of you. I think that's awesome.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah, you're one of my favorite students. Okay. So Meghan, you're also one of my favorite students. And so I'm gonna, what we'll do, if you ladies don't mind, after we talk a little bit, I'm gonna open up to a few questions from people. Is that okay? Can everybody stick around for like 5-10 more minutes and
Sure.
talk?
Yeah, I'll stick around for a while.
Okay, because I know, people want to eat and all that kind of stuff. So like, I never want to assume anything. I'm always I'm always grateful that that I have such good friends that are here to help and talk. So thank you. All right, Meghan, I'm going to ask you. So what do you want to tell? We came from Pittsburgh.
Right.
So we've already talked about our kind of thing. You kind of went through a similar thing that I did, right? You were kind of like told like,
Oh yeah. Everyone told me to not be an artist or an animator, but I didn't listen, and I'm really glad I didn't. I moved to LA in late 2008, which was right around when the economy crashed, if anyone remembers that.
Yeah.
And it was a really weird time because when I got to LA, the few people I knew who had moved out here, everyone had immediately lost their jobs. Like everyone I knew was losing their jobs. So it took me a while to break in. I freelanced around. Actually, at one point, Dave, I was freelancing for buddies back home in Pennsylvania, getting paid like Pennsylvania rates.
Money.
But was paying LA rent, so that was not very fun.
Yeah.
And then I interned at Shadow Machine for a while. That was back when internships could be unpaid, which, I could have been really bitter about, but there's a lesson in that because I kept really good relationships with everyone there at Shadow Machine. I thought, I'll never work there again. They're a stop motion studio. I don't want to do stop motion, even though I really appreciate it and like it. They were doing Robot Chicken and stuff like that at the time. Thought I'd never end up there again. And 9 years later was when I applied to be on Bojack Horseman. And now at that time, Shadow Machine was doing 2D and they were doing Bojack. And when I went in for my interview, one of the producers actually remembered me from that time, like 9 years earlier. And it was really cool. That goes back to don't be a dick, right? Be someone, I ran into someone else I knew in that studio who remembered me from back then, who we were Facebook friends. And she probably vouched for me. She was probably like, oh yeah, Meghan was cool to work with. She had a good attitude. I was nowhere near the artist I am now 9 years ago, but I think what they remembered about me was that I probably had a good attitude, and it was just enough to say, yeah, she's cool. Hire her, in addition to all the portfolio experience I had at that time. later, and I got hired on Bojack. I think one other thing I'd want to say about in terms of just, you know, being a woman in the industry, it's really cool to have people to look up to. So I think, Ashley, what you're doing is really cool, you know, being a supervising director and stuff like that, because one of the most important moments in my career, I had been at South Park for I think 7 or 8 years, and I just randomly went to a networking event. It was like a women in the industry event. I don't even think it was animation specific, but I ended up just by chance meeting someone named Amy Winfrey. And if anyone knows who Amy Winfrey is or doesn't know who she is, you should look her up immediately, because not in addition to her like amazing personal work, she is one of the directors on BoJack Horseman, and she's directed probably like all of your favorite episodes. So incredible. So I started just randomly talking to her at a networking event. And yeah, I see it in the chat, Making Fiends. It's awesome. That's one of her personal projects. But and it was super inspiring. I mean, she's like kind of a soft-spoken person and like really chill, but like just like having like talked to her, and she's like, yeah, I'm a director on the show. And it just made me think like, man, what am I doing with my life? Like I could, like, it was like, it just like, it blew my mind. I met her and Ann Farrell Walker. And I was like, oh my God, these two women are like directing this really amazing show. And it was like so inspiring to me to talk to them and see like, oh my God, that could be my path. Like Amy had worked at South Park many years ago. So that was when I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to apply to be a board artist. And I applied to be a board artist on Tuca and Birdie. I did a test for them. I didn't get it, which was okay though, because they liked my work enough that when Bojack rolled around and they needed more artists, they remembered my test and they hired me. And like a year after meeting Amy Winfrey for the first time, I was on her storyboard team as my first job being a board artist. And oh man, it was just like the coolest thing in the world. I was like so thankful, and I just felt so lucky to have that opportunity. So yeah, it's really cool to have like mentors and have people you can look up to and just like, oh, this is a path I can take. This is how I can get to where I want to go. And yeah, so that's kind of my story. And then then I met my current director, Alex Salyer, at Bojack. We actually sat next to each other at Bojack, and you know, we got to know each other that way. And now he's a director, and he hired me on. That's where I work with Dave now, and also Jeff, who's in this class. He's muted and he's hiding, but it's kind of cool how there he is. It's kind of cool how once you start like getting to know people in the industry, and once you prove you can do good work, like jobs come to you. I think it's just that first job is the hardest a lot of times.
I think it is too. I think that, you know, a lot of people, it's kicking that door down. Meghan, you said some really nice things. I think that's, you know, and Ashley, I do agree. I think that you know, I think you should be, you know, I'm sure when you're in the moment, you're not really thinking as much about the stuff, but, you know, girls, you know, I'm sure you're an inspiration to a lot of girls who, you know, young girls who are trying to break in, the women who are in the business, you know, because you show it can be done and done well. So I think that's very cool. All right, I'm going to open this up to some questions. So Cindy Fung, I'm going to let you unmute yourself. And if you have something to question, you had a question you wanted to ask. So why don't you ask it?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So earlier, I think it was Joey who brought up that you didn't, for like between graduating from art school all the way to getting a job, it took you 4 years, like 2013 to 2017. I was wondering, like, I'm pretty sure that you were probably networking and polishing your portfolio. And I was just wondering if you like did anything else in addition to that, because I feel like I'm kind of in that situation right now. Because I graduated about a little bit over a year ago. I'm already having people tell me like, I'm kind of getting worried about you because, you know, nothing's happening for you. Yeah.
Don't let those people say that to you. You know what? It's like, don't be worried. Like, oh, whether things happening before you. Sometimes it just takes however long it takes. The other stuff that I did a lot of freelance work. I built an entire full-time career out of freelance work. Like I was mentioning, I did theme park design and I worked on game design and did some freelance animation stuff for like distant studios. And then of course, comic books. I worked in full-time in comic books for several years. When it came to wanting to like, kind of like reinvigorating I want to get into a studio love, because also the freelance distracted a little bit away from my drive. What I started doing besides networking and polishing my portfolio is I also started taking classes, for example, Dave's class, because it gets you around other people and it helps you network with people who are in the industry, because honestly, knowing people in the industry is one of the best ways to get a job going. Like my friend who I work with at Fox was actually the one who helped me get a test there, because like, I've known him, he's a friend of my husband's, we've known him since 2008, I want to say, and it was just, oh, surprise, he happened to be working there. I was like, hey, do you want to test? Yes, please, oh my God. So it's networking, but it's also networking the right way. It's not just meeting, you know, other people in the same position as you are, but also meeting people who can teach you important things and give you new skills. Like taking Dave's class, I think really, I had already had my first storyboard job at that point, but it was in technology. Weirdly, I worked for Snapchat for a while doing storyboards for them, and to make the transition into an animation studio was hard. So Dave's class really helped me kind of bridge that gap and get in there.
Oh, thanks, Joey. That's nice of you to say.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'll pay you later.
Does that answer your question, Cindy?
Yeah, thank you so much, because like I feel like I'm not even like able to get freelance jobs either, but I mean, it's just all pushing through it.
It's hard, yeah. You can do it. I believe in you.
Thank you.
Ashley, Beth, anybody want to kind of have anything to add to Cindy's question, what Joey said? Add on to
it actually took me about a year before I got hired into, between when I graduated and when I got hired. And a lot of what I just did was just working on my portfolio. Like I still had a full-time job to do, you know, to pay the rent, but I just kept hammering away. I'm like, okay, this reel didn't get what I needed. I'm going to do a brand new project. What is missing? What am I, when I look at stuff that's like on the shows that I want to get hired by, what are they doing that I haven't demonstrated I can do? And so the reel that eventually got me hired was completely different from what it was when I had graduated. I'd completely replaced every single project. So as tough as it sounds, just keep, you know, doing more projects, doing more work and trying to improve.
Yeah, I agree with Candace. If you're not having success with what you're putting out there right now, then you might need to change things up a little bit. Even just changing the order of a presentation, but not putting in new work can sometimes create a completely different impression. And you have such a small window of time to catch somebody's interest. If I'm being sent multiple portfolio links, I better see what I need in like the first 2 or 3 samples. Like, don't make someone search forever and ever. Don't have such an extensive reel with the good stuff at the end. No one's going to get to the end. So you might look at that. When I was job hunting and I was starting to get really frustrated after not getting anything for months, I actually asked one of the producers who I had interviewed with, and then they gave it to somebody else. I was like, hey, I don't mean to be weird, but can you tell me what I'm messing up? Because I'm not getting work and I don't understand, because everyone at school thought I was great and I was the top of my class, and what's the missing piece here? And he was cool enough to just like give me some tips. And he said, you know, honestly, it's not you, it's just the timing. We had this person who already worked here who we wanted to move into this position. So it's not even you, it's not your fault. So sometimes that's a relief to hear, so that you can get out of your own head and know it's not you. But also, if you ask for that kind of feedback, just be ready to hear honest answers and be receptive to that.
Yeah, and I think also, this is kind of a little bit what Joey was saying, kind of networking, but like authentic networking. If I'm not saying you do this, but like the hypothetical you, if you go up to someone who's in the industry or who's working or who's a producer or a director or whatever, and you kind of start talking to them, kind of like angling for a job or kind of wanting to talk about that, it feels very, very uncomfortable, and it's very, very obvious most of the time, versus authentic networking is stuff like taking classes with people who are in the industry, which is like, you're in Los Angeles, this is the best place. It's such a way to get a leg up on people who are like not in state and can't necessarily do that. Even if it's just an online class with people who work in the industry, that's really good. And just kind of trying to create, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook, with people who you follow, like trying to create like meaningful relationships that aren't just, having people take an interest in you because they actually care about you versus just trying to get a job is, I think, those are the kind of people who I advocate for the most, are people who it's like, your work is good, but also you're a really cool person, and I really like you as a person. I think you'd be a really good coworker. Those are the people who you want to bring on, So that's also something to kind of maybe think about.
Absolutely.
Meghan. Oh yeah, sure. I think some of the best advice I ever got is from my good friend Neil Gaiman, who's not actually my friend, but but he, in a commencement speech, once said the quote, like, as an artist, you should always be walking towards the mountain. And it's something I kind of never forgot in terms of like the projects that you make. And that means like the mountain is the goal, like wherever it is that you want to go. And sometimes you're going straight up the mountain, you're going right towards that goal. And sometimes you're taking like little side paths. But as long as you're going towards that goal, and the metaphor means like the projects that you're working, the work that you choose to do, as long as you're, going in the direction of that goal, I think it's positive. Because I know in my case, anytime I've ever worked on like a little side personal project, like I drew a webcomic, I showed it to some friends, I didn't even like want to put it online. And then immediately, like a little bit later, some people would pass it around and someone was like, hey, do you want a gig drawing some webcomics? So cool. So I started drawing this webcomic. I did some animation for a friend that went on my reel, which helped me. Then I knew how to do After Effects for the next gig. Then, a couple of years later, when it's time for me to do storyboards, even though I've been an animator for 9 years, because I've been drawing this webcomic, I also have the drawing skills that I can transition from being an animator to being a board artist because I've been putting all that time in. So I think my advice is, do projects that interest you, take on work that gets you towards your goal. Maybe you're not getting directly at that goal, but as long as you're moving towards it in some way, I think it's going to ultimately benefit you, because I think every little side project I've ever done has like helped me in some way get closer to the next goal, to the next goal, to the next goal.
That Neil Gaiman speech, I think, is the greatest commencement speech ever given.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, I know.
I love that speech.
It's a great speech. That's a great speech. Yeah, I think it's one of the best ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, let's see. Josh, do you want to ask? You want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, I just typed up my question and put it on the chat. So for myself, my aim right now is making portfolio as a presentation to when I actually start applying to a position for a studio. So in this, I know as much as like having social skills was kind of something I've learned early on. I started networking even as far back in high school with some professionals. They've always kind of like gave me the tips on how to like make your portfolio and shape it the way which could get you the gig. So in my for me, what are some important aspects of the portfolio that should demonstrate your capabilities?
I think it depends what type of work you're looking to get, because that can be different for feature versus TV, or even kids TV versus adult TV. For me, when I look at portfolios, I look for shippable assets, and I look for an understanding of how the assets will be used. So say often if I go to a college portfolio day or something, I see a lot of people with expression sheets. That's cute. I can't use that. I can't ship that. We don't do that in prime time. What I can use are character turns. What I can use are mouth charts. So sort of doing the very practical, boring stuff, but it demonstrates that you understand how your assets are going to be used and what role it plays in the big picture. That's somebody I'm more likely to hire than somebody who just has a bunch of goofy drawings that don't really mean anything and don't really get a production anywhere.
And to add on to that, is a life drawing facet of the portfolio important? And this is something I was kind of studying for most of my development. So it's like most of my portfolio is consisting of that, but I wanted to kind of like narrow down and do storyboards to kind of, you know, demonstrate I can tell a story, so to speak. But would that be something worth putting in the portfolio?
I mean, I think a lot of people would tell you yes. I fucking hate life drawing. I hate doing it. I hate looking at it. So you're asking the wrong person. But you do need to understand that stuff.
No.
You do need to have some understanding of volumes and anatomy. So I'm not going to come out and say it's useless. It is not.
Yeah.
I just think it's gross, and I don't want it.
Cool. All right. That's perfect.
Solid advice from Ashley Long.
Yeah.
So the you know, dude, like, I think life drawing is important because you do need to understand structure. I don't think there's any director who's going to look at life drawing if you have no samples of storyboarding and storytelling who are going to look at your life drawings and go, that's the guy I want storyboarding my show.
Totally.
It's not going to happen. So the truth is you have to have storyboard samples, way more storyboard samples than life drawing. Probably 90% storyboards, like 2% life drawing, and maybe 8% like something of your own characters or something in there that you might want to put in there. So,
When we're talking about applying for a storyboard position, then, right.
Yeah, if that's what you're applying for, right.
For me, that's kind of, I feel like that my direction is leading to that. So yeah, I would want to put more storyboards. Yeah,
you have to be able to tell, you know, people have to they have to be able to see that you can tell a story. Like, you know, without that, you can have all the life drawings, all the drawings of, you know, most beautiful. Look, Michelangelo was a hell of an illustrator. I don't know how good he would be as a storyboard artist. You know, he might suck at it for all I know. So, you know, there's a difference, and there's a big difference between the two. I found that out coming from comics. I came from an illustration background. I came from, you know, it was all about doing, like, you know, it was style over substance a lot of times. At least I thought, you know, that was kind of what it was. And, you know, I came from Marvel. I came from, you know, I was working on all the big books, working on big books over there. When I got into animation, it was humbling because I realized what I didn't know. And I think that, you know, you have to really be able to demonstrate that you understand cinema and the art of cinema as well. And, you know, also whatever show you're applying for, you should have a good sampling of that type of show in your portfolio. If you're applying to Paradise PD, Ashley might go, wow, there's some really great Batman stuff in here that you have, but I have no idea if you can do Paradise because I don't see anything in here that's reflective of that. So you want to make sure that you have, whatever you're applying for, you have something that's representative of that type of show, you know, when you're showing their work, because it's hard enough for them, you know, they don't have all day to look at portfolios. They have a precious amount of time to look at stuff. So you want your best stuff, like Ashley said, up front, and you want it to look, you know, and be representative of their show. And in Ashley's case, don't put any life drawing in because it's gross.
Understood.
But you will need to know how to draw a penis. I'm just saying, it's gonna come up.
Okay.
You know, I think it's probably okay. Like, he, you know, so I'm sure he's you know, that's, you know, I don't know how much life drawing he'd need for that. So, you know, I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
So all right. So Josh, did we answer your question for you enough?
Yes, you did. I would add on, I mean, I'll make a list of other questions I might come up with. Thank you guys for now.
All right. Joey's got to take off. Joey, it's nice seeing you. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. It was nice
of course.
to meet everybody.
Yeah. And it was nice having you. So it's nice. You know, it's always nice seeing you. So once all this stuff's done, you know, it'll be nice to hopefully be able to see everybody in person at some point. So
yeah, sometime soon.
Yeah.
Joey, I would love to talk about comics with you sometime.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to hear you. Yeah, definitely. So
yes, let's connect on social media or whatever. Talk about it.
That would be awesome. It was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you all. Bye everybody.
Bye.
Good night. All right. Any last questions? Ashley said before her and Beth are taking off. So any last questions? Anybody have a question for these wonderful people? maybe we answered everything. You answered everything. Look at that. So, all right. I think so. I think we answered a lot of this. I wanted to say, so I'm going to let everybody go. But first and foremost, I want to thank everybody for being so gracious with their time and coming on. And I'm sure that the people were on here, you helped a lot and inspired a lot of them. And I'm going to put this up on YouTube so people can hear, more people will be able to hear your stories and everything. And thank you. I think our industry needs to do a lot more of this type of stuff. They need to hear from, all of you talented ladies that are out there. And I think it's important, just like you said, to your point, Meghan, to be inspired, and I think that sometimes can be what helps somebody succeed and somebody else not succeeding, is knowing that, that you're blazing a trail and you're doing stuff. And, and I admire all of you. I think you're all, Beth, I don't know your work, but I do know Paradise PD. So it's a great show. And, I'm sure that the work that you do is phenomenal. So, it's an honor having you all on here. Thank you so much for taking your time and doing this. Is there anything that any of you want to say before we go? Before we head out? No, we cover it all.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome.
Hope to see you all again at some future networking event when we're no longer 6 feet apart. Right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So Meghan, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Ashley, thank you so much. Beth, thank you so much for doing this. You're awesome. So thank you.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
And so do we know, like, when are more episodes of Paradise dropping? We have any idea yet of anything?
I don't know what the release dates
All
for
right.
the next set are. I'm going to say maybe late summer, early fall.
All right.
I don't have a date, though.
All right. So I don't want to get you in any trouble. So
Yeah.
we'll end it there. But thank you. And go get something to eat. Hopefully Mark brought you pizza. So thank you for dressing up. Thank you so much. So have a wonderful night. I will see some of you tomorrow, and I will talk to some of you on Facebook at some point soon, hopefully. And hopefully we can all get together soon. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Have a wonderful night, everybody. Bye. Damn thing.